Who's here? Now I got two of you here. Who's here? Let me know so I know who I'm talking to. Dang, we can chitter chat on here all day long and not catch a coronavirus. Not get drunk at all. Well, maybe I won't go that far. We might get drunk. Who knows? Uh-oh, I lost somebody. Who'd I lose? I had them and then I lost them. They didn't like my humor. Who's here? Oh, it's Fancy Lou Who. Now I can see you over here. I was looking down where I was looking. Fancy Lou Who. I tend to give everybody nicknames. I don't know why. It's just easier for me to remember. And Fancy Lou Who just kind of rolls off my tongue. I don't know why. How are you, darling? Are you having a good day? Don't you stay at home or do you work? Well, I mean, like go to a job and work. I know yours. Hi, Ori. How are you? Nice to meet you, I think. I don't think I know you. Or is that Ori K as in... I wonder if that's my other Ori K. Yeah. Hey, Mynae, isn't it? Hey, Daniel. How's it going? Are you excited? That is funny that your mama, your aunts and mom and used to call you Fancy Lou Who. That is funny. You taste baby. So you do work hard, but you're not like quarantine like Nina or K on here. K. Y'all is here. At least I think I got the right night. It is the right night, isn't it? Yeah, because Nathan's been doing your stuff all day. Whew, sometimes I have to, I get them all mixed up sometimes. So sometimes I have to go on my look and see what she's pimping out there, because sometimes I get it all mixed up. Oh, I hear NCIS coming on. So, did everybody celebrate St. Patty's Day? I got my green on. I got jingle bells on, but they're green. So, I got my scarf on, my Dollar Tree scarf. Nina, is that not you? Is it Ori K? I think it is her. Oh, me. I've been on lockdown since I was in the hospital. I remember that. I kept saying, put me on quarantine. Lock me down in the house. See if I pitch a fit. Well, I saw that Ori K come up and I was like, Ori K. And I was like, hey, Ori K, nice to meet you. And then I was like, or do I already know you? So. I want you to be my lover, lover, lover. All righty. You guys, are you guys ready for tonight? It's going to be good. Yeah. 3 chapters I'm reading tonight. She's bent like that. She's got back fat. Did you notice that, Daniel? She's got back fat. I love it. Did you guys see that latest thing I posted on Facebook wall? My sister-in-law just sent it to me. It'd be easier if I just read it from there. It is, let's see. One of the side effects of the coronavirus is shortness of breath. How am I supposed to know if I have it? Bitch, I'm fat. I can't breathe sometimes as it is. I say that every day when I go walking or when I'm coming in from work. All righty. Who else we got on here tonight? Who else is with us? I actually like YouTube better because it's faster for everybody to respond. I mean, like, I can almost talk in real time and not have to wait on you guys to respond to me. Hi, Sarah. How are you, darling? Welcome to the Looney Bin. The Book Nook. Daniel, are you nervous? I've had seasoned authors on here that when I read their books, they get all nervous. Jackie's in the house. Oh, they don't have hearts here? Do they not have emojis? I'm sure you did, Daniel. I'm good with it if you are. I'm gonna be reading chapters 1, 7, and 9. I only got to like chapters 3 or 4 right after he left the garage, and because I don't want to give too much away. He left the garage, was picked up, and they were driving somewhere. That's when I fell asleep. So don't be nervous, Daniel. Don't be nervous. This crew's the best crew in the world to listen to you. So it doesn't have hearts? Is that what the problem is? Oh, I see what you're talking about. You can put like text emojis, but you can't put like the floating, like when the hearts go up, right? See, I'm still learning this YouTube stuff, but it's got normal. It's got normal keyboard emojis, so to speak. This is my girls. Oh, there we go. I think I put an extra monkey in there, but that's all right. Yeah, it's got hearts. It just, you got to go looking for everything. All right, you guys ready to get started? I think I'm past time now. Just trying to give everybody time to get on here, find me. Oh, we got a good crowd in here tonight. Okay. So I need that to go away. How do I make that go down? Nope. Oh, there we go. No. Okay, now I can't get my emojis to disappear. Oh, there goes keyboard. I got it. Alrighty. So, it's got a really sexy cover because it's got a girl with back fat on it. There she is. See her back fat. I love it. It's beautiful. So, alrighty. So, this is called First to Follow. It's book 1 in the 4th Sin series. And I'm going to be reading chapters 1, 7, and 9. So we're going to go through this and see what we got. All right. And I'm going to take my glasses off, so I'm not going to be able to read anything unless I get super close. Oh, look, y'all. I was ready today. Forgot to show you guys that, didn't I? Okay. Whatever this is, you don't need to go through with it, Luke, Celeste urged desperately. My phone slipped in my hand as drops of sweat began trickling down my face. I knew she was right. I could walk away right now if I wanted to. There were potential consequences if I didn't follow through with the plan, but the outcome, if I did, was a certainty. My life would be forever and irreversibly changed. Celeste continued to plead with me to reconsider, to start the car and drive back to her place to talk. I could hear every word, but I wasn't really listening. Another voice was whispering in my other ear. It was Lorelei. There was no one else in the car with me, but I could hear her as clearly as I could hear Celeste in my left ear. I shook it off as nothing more than a result of our connectedness. Lorelei didn't have to be here for me to know what she would be saying. Her soft, sweet voice echoed through my mind. I need you, Luke. I'd do anything for you. I love you. Please help me. The noise of both women's words made it impossible to think. I'm sorry, Celeste, I said into my phone, but I need to go. Don't worry about me. With that, I pulled the phone away and tapped the red button to end the call. The screen was covered with sweat from being pressed against my face, so I wiped the screen on my pant leg before I silenced the ringer and tossed the phone into the passenger seat. The pounding of my heart rattled my chest, and I had to focus a moment to calm my breathing. Was I even capable of doing something like this? I was so anxious, I was almost hyperventilating. Make sure there's nothing, you guys aren't trying to get my attention. Nina, Vinci, if you guys need me, text me because I can't, the way I've got this set up, I can't see what's going on over here in the comments. So if the video starts doing something funky, let me know. The pounding of my heart rattled my chest, and I had to focus a moment to calm my breathing. Was I even capable of doing something like this? I was so anxious. I was almost hyperventilating, and I was still just sitting in my car. For this to have any chance of working, I needed to calm down. I told myself that while this may be an impossible task for me a few short months ago, I was a different person now. I could handle this. For her, I could do anything. Before I met Lorelei, I was an average guy, living a decent, if predictable, life. I held a good job for nearly 10 years, had some money set aside, and was looking to meet the right girl to settle down with. Aside from a single speeding ticket I picked up out of state one time, I was squeaky clean and something of a rule follower. I'd never been in a fight, though I had trained in the martial arts, and I was good at avoiding conflict. Most who knew me would have described me as a nice guy who played it safe. That was who I had been. It's not who I was now. Over the last few months, my life had completely changed course. I lost my job and spent more than one night in jail. I never would have imagined that anything like that would have happened to me. But at the same time, I knew my old life was salvageable. But now, as I sat in my car, heart pounding in my chest, I knew that if I did this one thing, my life as I knew it would end forever. It was wrong, but it was her only option. Nothing else could help her. And after this, there was no way she'd ever turn her back on me. One massive risk to win her heart forever. Wasn't that worth it? The thought of losing her was too much to bear, and I knew what needed to be done. My heart was still racing the sweet. My heart was still racing, and the sweat stung my eyes as it poured down my forehead, but I couldn't wait any longer. It's time, her voice called out to me. Now, before you get too scared, for me, Luke, do it for me. Show me how much you love me. I picked the face mask up off the dash and pulled it over my face. It trapped the sweat and was uncomfortably wet the moment it was on. But that didn't matter. I pulled the case from the back seat and opened it to find the rifle she'd given me. The magazine was already in. It was ready to go. People were walking down the street right past my car. I saw a man do a double take as he walked by and knew that there wasn't any more time left to waste. Someone was going to call the cops before I even made it inside. I threw my door open and jogged to the front door. There was a security guard seated just inside, but I had my gun on him long before he saw me coming. I was shouting orders that I had rehearsed, but in truth, I was on autopilot and couldn't hardly recall what I had said or done since leaving my car. When the sounds of people screaming registered in my brain, I reasoned that they'd likely been screaming since I ran inside, but I had tuned them out at first. Now the sound was deafening. Maybe it's better with my glasses. I may have to hold my tablet. Shut up, I yelled menacingly, eliciting a few shrieks from some customers, but most of the crowd fell into a terrified silence. Some were quietly crying, but most just stared at the ground, willing themselves invisible. It was done. There was no undoing this now. All that was left was to try and get the job done and get away clean. Thinking about anything else was only going to further jeopardize my and Lorelei's future. My mind cleared out of all the what ifs and I became laser focused. Money in the bag now, I shouted, tossing a canvas bag over the counter and waving the rifle to the tellers that were crouched down on the other side. I can help you, a middle-aged man said as he approached the counter from the back. I'm the manager. I can give you what you need. Please don't point that at them. Whoever the manager was, he was a good man. I was happy to have someone helping and appreciated not having to terrorize the women I'd initially approached. There was absolutely no joy in the task, and all I wanted was to get the money and get this over with as quickly as possible. All the money in the bag, I shouted with as much conviction as I could muster. If I don't have all the money in 30 seconds, I'm shooting one of these women. He had to hurry. If he delayed to give the police more time, I'd never make it out of here. My only shot was speed. As it was, I'd never get more than 3 blocks away before getting stopped by the police once the call went out Anyhow, my only chance was to vanish. The manager moved quickly from till to till, tossing handfuls of cash into the bag for me. It wasn't going to be millions of dollars, but it would be enough. The sobs of the women crouched behind the counter sent a sickening feeling deep into my gut. How had my life come to this? I never wanted this. I wished I could tell the women that I wouldn't hurt them, but I needed them to be afraid. There was no room for compassion here. I reasoned with myself that these women would be okay in the end. It was Lorelei who was in danger. This money was saving her life. No one else would understand, but I was trying to do the right thing. What man wouldn't go to such lengths to save the woman he loved? Once this was over, once she was safe in my arms again, none of this would matter. Holding her would make everything else feel right. I didn't delude myself that everything would be fixed, but I could handle anything with her at my side. All I needed was her presence. The feeling of her soft lips on mine gave me the sweet escape from reality I'd come to crave. I was addicted. I'd become an addict, lost without getting the fix that my body and soul needed as much as oxygen. Hurry, Luke, I need you. Lorelei's voice was back inside my head, her grip on me as strong as ever. My doubts and even my thoughts of her were a weakness I couldn't afford right now. I suppressed them deep down inside couldn't distract me anymore. Here you go, the manager said, handing the bag over the counter to me. Thank you, I replied, realizing how stupid it likely sounded the moment I finished saying it. Turning from the counter toward the door, I saw the security guard holding a gun on me. He must have had another gun on him, and he shouted for me to freeze. No, I was so close. I could see myself fleeing the bank, heading straight to Lorelei. I could almost feel her. I couldn't let him stop me. If I was caught, both of our lives would be over. I need to leave now, I said, my fingertip rolling over the trigger of the rifle that was already pointing in the guard's general direction. Don't move a muscle, the old man shouted, hands trembling. I could see the barrel of the gun wavering from side to side and knew that it wasn't pointing right at me most of the time, but I could never reach him before he landed a shot on me. He wasn't leaving me any choice. Please let me pass. I don't want anyone to get hurt. I saw the clock over him as the final words left my mouth, and I realized I was out of time. Neither do, the guard started to say, but the sound of my rifle cut him off and echoed across the room. The guard never even fired his gun. 2 of the 3 shots I fired hit him, and he slumped over instantly. I didn't look to see where it struck him. It was enough to see 2 spots on his body that began turning red with his blood. Murder. I just murdered a man. There was no doubt now that I was completely lost. Lorelei's face flashed into my vision, a silhouette across the backdrop of the bank. I could hear screams of the others on the floor, but it was almost as if they were in another room, far away from me. I ran for the door as fast as I could. I had to get to Lorelei. Something had to come of this. Why hadn't I listened to Celeste? Alrighty, so now we're going to jump to chapter 7. Yes. 8 months before robbery in another realm. Hissing and spitting from all directions filled my mind. Our master was gone, our egos empty, and our purpose unclear. From my first day of creation, I'd been born with one purpose, assigned to one master. I lost my wings with him, followed him out of the sanctuary and into the realm of pride and suffering. We were kings here, but even as such, I served him. His legion was vast, a prize of the master Barados. I'm going with that, but I'm not sure. Barados' influence extended far and wide across the realm of the spirit with a powerful influence over the world of man. Now that was all over. Birthing pains of the final battle had been heard for many earthly generations now, but only recently had the angelic forces begun to engage. Barados' destruction shook our spirits more than any before him. Surely the master would retaliate, but in the meantime, I had nothing to do for the first time in forever. No orders of influence, no nightmares to cast. I was lost. I must have a purpose. Without glory, I was falling for nothing. My purpose was pride, and it was time for me to find a new source. I could sense others attaching themselves to new masters, but my ambition swirled around my agony. Agony passed away the moment I saw the opportunity in front of me. I was a demon of the fourth sin, a master of man's lustful desires. The material world had given itself over to me and my kind already, and that made for a ripe harvest. There were no limits to the success we could achieve in mankind's evolved modern society. Now was the time to reap a harvest for myself. None would follow me yet, but I could begin to build a following in their world. Even just a few robbed of their God given purpose and in servitude to me for dark desires would earn the attention of new overlords. There would never be another chance for me to establish my own kingdom. The master was generous and granted my request before I had even finished imagining what might be. Now I just needed to find a victim and prove myself. Failure to win someone worthy would result in shame and a lower status than I could not bear. I would not fail. I scoured the world in search of my victim. There were so many hanging right on the cusp of a fall already, but they were too easy. I was a master of my craft. I didn't need to sell myself short. And what would be years of hunting in the world of time's passage, I found my mark. Luke Andrews would be my first. He was not a believing man, but he was blessed and a prime target for an upward calling if left unchecked. Confidence brewed in him, and he was secure and certain. Far from an easy target, he had showed an admirable resistance to the temptations of the flesh in the past, but I knew that I could find a crack in his armor. He was a man alone, still apart from God, and there was just a whisper of loneliness that was beginning to build. It was more than enough for me to exploit. This would be fun. Resisting my urge to dive right into his life and attempt to seduce him in that moment was challenging. But I knew there was a better way. So much of his life was coming to a pivotal climax in the near future, and I would make sure that his pride was as high as it had ever been. I went to work right away, but not in Luke's life. Not yet. Instead, I began to whisper in the ears of others. The senior VP with the most weight on the panel that Luke was planning to present to was a lonely widow. Her work was everything to her, and she lacked confidence in her love life since her husband of 20 years had passed away. Making her see Luke's glances was too easy. The turn of his head at her walking by turned into so much more in her eyes. What was with his smile? Was he flirting? Something as simple as a suggestion was enough to make someone see what they wanted to see. Putting his non-existent flirtations together with a desire to see him successful was easy. Slipped information to some of his teammates found its way into his work stream, and her mind was as good as made up before the presentation was even given. It wasn't enough, though. I spread ideas and thoughts all across his world. Everything needed to be perfect for him. His parents were happier than normal and were complimentary of his work, more than willing to boost his confidence and express their pride in everything he was accomplishing. The VP that would be hiring for a promotion he wanted started to pay more attention to Luke's work ethic and questioned whether his initial thought that he needed a more seasoned employee for that role was fair. Even more subtle things that Luke might not think consciously about were happening all around him to raise him up to his own personal cloud nine. The young, attractive woman in the office kept finding themselves checking him out, and all the guys were laughing at his jokes with just a bit more enthusiasm. 2 months of walking on water socially had Luke's posture a little straighter, his eyes a little brighter, and his confidence surging. He was primed for the taking. When the day finally arrived, I watched as all the seeds I had planted came together in the perfect concert of manipulation. He didn't just beat the other team, he destroyed them with the information I'd helped him acquire. Jeff gave him a promotion that he didn't really deserve. Everyone wanted to congratulate him, and the alcohol at the end of the night only made him more vulnerable. As his evening was coming to an end, I began to craft an image that would provide a sufficient reaction from Luke. I hadn't taken human form in so long that it was disorienting at first, but I got my bearings while concealing myself from anyone's view. I supposed that if I looked a little uneasy, a drink in my hand would quite easily explain that. Laurelus would become Lorelei to complete my first human acquisition. Blonde hair down to my shoulders, a pouty smile with a dimple on one side, big eyes that would beckon him to me with expressions of their own, and an hourglass body that hot enough to make any man look twice. All that was easy, but I knew the little details to make it believable. A small scar just above one eye, a little bit of tussle to the hair to make it look just this side of perfect, and a slight reduction to my bust size, just enough to make me real. Men are simple creatures, but their doubt can cause problems and ruin the suggestion of attraction. I needed to be right on the edge of his reach, and I was confident as I gazed back upon the body I'd made for myself. The last of his co-workers left, and I watched him sit back down while waiting for his ride. I waited for the bartender to stand between us and then revealed myself. To everyone else, I'd been there all along. The drink I had conjured was already a memory to the bartender who believed he had made it for me. But Luke had not seen me there. The sudden addition of a body that his mind had not registered in that seat would catch his attention, but he would assume he just hadn't seen me arrive. Mortal minds were such feeble instruments. My eyes were down on my drink, but I felt his gaze follow me. I was in tune with his emotions, and I could sense the instant attraction. I was very pleased with myself for having done so well. She's lonely, I told him by suggestion before glancing up and smiling back at him when I caught him staring. It was purely his confidence and natural reaction to come and talk to me at that point, and I knew I had him then. He had me after nothing more than a look, and it was time to set the hook. I could reel him in right then and there, but I wasn't looking for a momentary lapse of mistake. For me to really capture him and make him my own, to claim his soul for myself and for the master, it would take a learned dependence. This was a long game, and I was just getting comfortable in the driver's seat. Things were about to get very, very interesting. I played it easy the first night. He drank away all of his inhibitions, and I hardly had to do anything to get him in a car with me. Seeing that he couldn't even stand on his own, I had no concern of being caught when his phone ended up in my hand from his pocket. He gave a strange look when I handed it back with my number programmed in, but it washed away, and he smiled like the drunken idiot he was in that moment. My confidence in his attraction was so strong that I didn't even plant a suggestion to call me. At that point, I would have been shocked if he made it more than a day without asking me out. Sure enough, the call came the next day, and I waited patiently for the opportunity to continue advancing our connection. Each time we were together, I gave him surges of confidence. I didn't wash out his anxiety I didn't wash out his anxiety about the new relationship. The aspect of the chase was far too crucial in a man's developing feelings. All he needed at that moment was a feeling of satisfaction and contentment. Right from the start, I would be a refuge for him. All the good that he was all the good that he was already feeling in his life would be manifest fully in our relationship. No matter what came at him, this same feeling would return when we were together. Even in the darkest times when thoughts weighed heavily, a piece of this would remain so long as he had me. His love for me would be an addiction, and I'd be his drug dealer and manufacturer. That was the key to manipulating the fourth sin. Just tempting someone with lust is easy. Using that lust to create a deeper emotional connection, one that is real and pure, that's not as easy. Even harder still was being able to manufacture the kind of real emotional connection and knowing how to balance that with continued doses of pure lust filled desire in order to manipulate a person. Pulling that off required a master of that sin. I was that master. A part of my expertise was knowing what helped to sink the hooks in most effectively. Most men would jump at a woman who threw themselves at him. But even men needed more than just sex and attraction to feel the deepest level of desires. Luke certainly fell into that category. In order to get the kind of control I was after, he needed to feel like he was getting a true emotional satisfaction. The tension I could feel from him as we went out on date after date was palpable, and I loved every minute of it. His desire for my body, together with his growing affection for me, pulled hard at his self-control and sensibilities. But for this to work, I knew that he had to make the move. Even if I pushed too hard to take him to that point, it could reduce the impact and make what I had planned much more challenging. After 2 weeks, I could tell that it was finally time. A building sense of anxiety drew me to him in his office that day, and I hovered, feeling his raw emotion and adding just a hint of more excitement for what was to come. Prodding his imagination to undress me in his mind and giving him a voice of reassurance that I was just as interested helped to cement his decision, and I chose an outfit that would play perfectly to his fantasy. The look on his face when I walked to his car was genuinely pleasing. I took more than a little satisfaction in being able to command that kind of attention. Continuing to play to his personality, I gave him just enough evidence of uncertainty and nerves to make him feel as though we were very much in tune. In Luke's mind, I was following his lead and very excited to see where he might take me. It was the high note for a man, the feeling that he was able to satisfy. My want for him deepened to his lust. Seeing my excitement and nerves as I blushed or looked away with a smile was like a straight shot of confidence for him. I already knew where he was taking me, but I played on the surprise, and even I enjoyed the meal. Food, like most of the base pleasures of men, was of little consequence to me. The human tendency to obsess over it and use it gluttonously to fill their empty shells is laughable. And I found that even I enjoyed the meal. The steak was juicy, flavorful, and dare I say, heavenly. The dessert was just as good, and Luke finally made his move as we shared the piece of cake. The invitation wasn't overly direct, but his tone and expression left little doubt what he wanted. There wasn't any need to fake my excitement. I was genuinely thrilled to see my plan coming together. And while the pleasures of the flesh didn't compare to what I had on tap for my own realm, they were still quite satisfying. My foot on his leg and the twinkle in my eye that I made sure he could see showed my excitement, and we were soon on our way. With the door open to play more on his physical desire without robbing him of his perceived control, I amped up my affection with him the moment there was an opportunity in front of the restaurant. I could feel his heart rate rising, and he was using all of his willpower to keep his body under control. It was like teasing a child with candy. Expressing my own anticipation on the car ride only amplified the sexual tension, but I allowed him to calm as we arrived home. A build up would be better, and there was no rush at all. We drank and talked some more in his living room. All the while I was dancing with his mind, letting him lead me right where I wanted and to prepare his building him up for something that he would never forget. Luke excused himself for a moment to prepare his room, and I pushed a final wave of confidence into him and then released my influence over him for the time being. The rest of the night needed to be natural. I couldn't play him when we came together for the first time. Everything had to be authentic. The heart could not be fooled as easily as the mind, and I needed his heart to connect at the same time as our bodies. I gave him enough time to get ready and then put myself in his doorway, lust and desire written all over my face. I let the desires of my own creative flesh guide me through and gave myself to him. We met in the most passionate kiss we'd shared, and I'd put my millennia of experience to work. The best sexual experiences are less about the act itself and more about the subtleties that are nearly imperceptible. The way I bit the corner of my lip when my dress fell made his heart jump a little. The soft noises I breathed into his ears caused his knees to weaken, accidentally putting in a suggestive position when I removed his pants before rising back to meet him as though I hadn't even noticed. The signs of innocence, the sounds of pleasure, and the apprehension and excitement, all of my signals were tying the man in knots before we'd ever made it to his bed. There was one last piece to my symphony of seduction, and that was the fire every man wanted, even in the quietest of women. I bit his lip and pulled him down on top of me, almost contradicting the other signals I had sent, but holding just short of breaking the spell. By the time our final garments were removed, all it took was a single look to spell the satisfaction I knew he wanted to see to ensure the best night of his entire life. After that, I simply let the act unfold and enjoyed the experience almost as much as my partner. For a mortal man, I had to admit that he was more capable than I had expected. Lying in his bed with him later that night, I extended myself into his being as much as I could manage. Everything that I could feel confirmed that it was time to move to the next phase of my plan. I reached over to his nightstand and shut his alarm off, knowing that I'd kept him up late enough that he'd sleep well past 6. I had given him every pleasure of the new relationship. He was hooked on the drug. Now it was time to start building a dependence on it. It would cost him everything, but continue to cost him everything. It would begin with a slip up in the morning and overtime, and I would become all consuming as our relationship became more and more codependent, and he lost himself in the black hole that was the fourth sin. He would feel the pressure of my need for him right alongside his own need for me. And that cycle would come to rule everything else in his life. He would willingly give me complete control. I would become his master, and in the end, the truth of my identity wouldn't even be enough to shake him free. That would be my victory. He would be the first to follow me and sell his soul in my name. Okay, now then, chapter 9. You guys liking it so far? It's a good book, isn't it? After the robbery, dim lights lit this part of the city as though the city itself wanted to hide in the shadows away from any light that may reveal the grime and grit that clung to every corner. I'm not a small man, and even I didn't feel all that safe here. More concerning than my own safety, but even I was having Lorelai with me. A girl as attractive as her was just asking to be dragged into a dark alley around here. I'd insisted that she stay home, but she refused, and somehow the girl always got her way with me. Never in my life had another woman had me so wrapped around her finger, but it never felt like Lorelai was manipulating me. Concessions didn't feel like concessions. Her adoration reminded me that I was in control. I just wanted her to be happy. Far from being whipped, as my friends might say, if they saw me with her, I just didn't disagree with her. Lorelai had told me that she had a way to get a gun that couldn't be traced back to me. How someone like her knew who to call for something like that was beyond me. But she didn't want to discuss that and just put her knowledge to work for our needs. As we walked under the yellow lights of the city streets, I couldn't help but noticing that while many women would have been terrified, Lorelai seemed completely in her element. While I was continually scanning the area for anything that might threaten her, Lorelai had her chin up like she owned those streets. It added another layer of mystery to her. It made her look dangerous. I'm gonna move this. It added another layer of mystery to her. It made her look dangerous, and it was a huge turn on. He'll be right back here, she said, pointing down into the alley to an alley with no overhead lights. From the street, it was just a dark void between buildings. The man we were looking for could be back there, but so could a dozen men waiting to jump us. Thinking about Lorelai getting hurt or me having to watch as she was raped filled my mind, but I knew I couldn't dwell on the terrible possibilities. There was simply too many. Are you sure you won't at least wait back in the car with the doors locked? I can handle this, but I'm worried about you. This is no place for you. I knew her answer already, and she gave it to me with a sideways glance that made me wish I'd never asked. She was coming down that alley with me, whether I liked it or not. Perhaps I wouldn't have been so uncomfortable if she had at least dressed down a bit for this little foray into the underbelly of the city. She was wearing tight jeans and a black shirt that highlighted her physique as well as anything else I'd ever seen her in. Several men along the side of the street had already taken notice, and I was terrified that it was only a matter of time before one of them tried something. I'd do my best to protect her, but realistically, it wasn't a fight I could win if there was too many of them. Lorelai didn't even wait for me and started to walk off the street into the alley. As I walked beside her, it took a moment for my eyes to adjust to the darkness. Gradually, I was able to make out the forms of a large dumpster, a fire escape, and then an old beat-up car. There was a lone man leaning just outside the driver's side door of the car who was looking our way. "Oh, you're looking hot," he said in his low, gravelly voice. "Elle," I whispered from beside her. "It was just a stupid nickname," she whispered back before responding to the other man. "Nice to see you again, Wally. You got what I called about?" Wally? I thought to myself, what the hell kind of name was that? I was about to buy a gun from an underworld criminal and his name was Wally. I wanted to gun I wanted a gun from Viper or Snakes, not Wally. I got your treat right here. Did you bring enough for it? He asked. I pulled the 400 from my pocket and held it out just like she'd told me to do. Wally walked over and grabbed the money, finally showing his face in the light. He wasn't a pleasant sight. He couldn't have been much older than me, but he looked like he'd been hit by several buses and then dried out in the sun. What would someone like Lorelei ever have to do with someone like this? He'd be lucky to talk to any woman, let alone the incredible beauty that I had beside me. At least I didn't have to feel jealous. He walked back to his car and pulled something off the seat. It was a brown paper bag. I almost laughed at just how cliche this deal was. All we were missing was some cheesy slow jazz to complete the B movie vibe. He tossed the bag to me and I looked inside. It was a revolver. No bullets? You can buy your own damn bullets. I don't hand loaded guns to customers. Let's just say that ain't good for business in my line of work. Lorelei looked at me and nodded. We were done then. I started to reach out to shake his hand out of habit, but I thought better of it and just gave a small half wave instead. Thanks, I said as we turned away. Anything for Elle, he said with a tone I didn't appreciate. Don't lose my number, babe, he called out as we neared the street again. Knowing that he had a loaded gun on him somewhere was about the only thing stopping me from beating him to a pulp for being so vile toward my girlfriend. It's a long story, Lorelei said as we neared the car. It must have been obvious that I had some questions after meeting the man. She continued, I'll tell you about it another time. All that matters now is that you've got what you need. I'll pick up some ammo tomorrow so no one sees you. Then you can take care of this and be done with it all. Killing a man sounded so simple when she said it like that. It wouldn't be simple. Michael wasn't just an average guy. He was always armed and never alone. I'd come around and seen the need to kill him now, but I still didn't know exactly how I was going to pull it off. My experience with crime had been pretty limited up to this point, and all had taken place in just the past few months. Even the bank job had been planned for me. How was I going to pull this off without getting myself killed or sent straight to jail when I was done? We got back in the car and started to drive away. The anxiety about all the unknown factors that remained was starting to get to me. But Lorelei smiled at me with bright eyes and a look that got me excited. What we were planning always got her fired up, and I could tell that getting the gun, the first meaningful step toward the completion of my task, had her adrenaline pumping and her libido on overdrive. Seeing her chest rise and fall in her excitement was enough to take my mind off the stress of what I had left to do. This really excites you, doesn't it? Mm-hmm, she replied, sliding her hand up my legs as she purred at me. You're going to turn me into a man of crime if you keep this up. Would you do that for me? She asked lightheartedly, but something in her eyes made me feel like there was a real question there. Would you do more bad things if you knew I liked it this much? Do you think it would be worth it to get me so excited? What would you do to me? What would you want me to do? I asked, smiling and trying to be clear that I was just joking around. What if I wanted you to rob another bank so we could have more money for ourselves? She asked, pulling her shirt down the side of her shoulder and showing a little bit more skin. Would you take a big risk if I offered you a big reward? We were still in a pretty rough part of town, and I had to focus on driving. So there was only so much attention I could give her, but Lorelei was pressing all my buttons. I love to role play a little, and she was clearly getting way into this little scenario. What would you do for me when I came back with the money? I asked her, letting my right hand find her knee and slide along her thigh over her jeans. What would you want? Was her reply. I thought for a moment, feeling my body getting more excited at the thought of what this fantasy might look like. I'd want to lay all the money out on the bed and take you right there on the prize. We'd make a giant mess of it. Lorelei's jaw dropped open and she beamed back at me, squeezing my leg a little in response. Remember that the next time you handle money? Yeah. That sounds hot, she said before sitting back in her seat and leaning it back. I was merging back onto the freeway and couldn't look, but I knew she was trying to tease me from her seat, recklessly daring me without saying a word to look over and take my eyes off the road. You are being bad, I said with a little laugh. You need to wait until we get home. I don't know if you want to take me home, she said with a heavy breath. You're a big, bad man with a gun now. Aren't I your captive? Please don't take me somewhere to abuse me. I'm a good girl. I nearly swerved into the next lane at the shock of her words. I'd never role played like that before, and having an actual gun in the seat behind me made it far more exciting than it would have been otherwise. Despite not having thought of it before, the moment the words left her lips, there was nothing I wanted more than to play it out. I thought for a moment about where we were and where I could take her that would offer the necessary seclusion. If my memory was correct, there was a state park just a few miles north of the next exit. It was dark and late enough that there shouldn't be anyone out there. It would be perfect. Changing lanes, I allowed myself a quick look to my right, and she was biting her fingers seductively. Lorelei always had the perfect look. The way her eyes shone, the dimple on her cheek, how the corners of her mouth turned up just slightly, even when she put on a pouty face for me. Somehow, she could tell me more with a single look than I could communicate in a sentence, and that was exciting, especially what she was telling me with this look. Even the loose strand of hair that fell off her ear and hung down in front of one eye looked perfectly placed to sell her message. I reached behind me and fumbled until I found the bag and pulled it into the front seat with me. Removing the pistol from the bag, I cocked the hammer back and pointed it at her. Oh my gosh, that gives me nightmares. He didn't even check to see if it was loaded. Allowing myself a brief look into her eyes as I did, and feeling power in the look I gave her. I don't know why that seemed like a good idea, but the racing of my heart seemed to be taking control, leaving my mind one step behind in the process. She reached down to unfasten her jeans, and I was sure that I'd drive us off the road if I were any more distracted. The thoughts of what she was planning for, just how far she might go, were enough to get my blood pressure up. There was no way I could handle the real thing. Stop that. You have to wait. Are you going to shoot me if I don't listen? She asked in fake outrage. Don't make me show you what I'll do. Her eyes widened at the threat, and a red flush filled her cheeks. Lorelei was loving this far more than I ever imagined she would, and so was I. The thrill of having power over her, even just role-playing that I was in that kind of control, roused me to the core. It called at something deep and dark inside of me that I'd never been in touch with before. Was it wrong? I wondered if I should feel shame at holding a real gun, at the woman I loved. If there was shame, it was buried so deep beneath the swirl of excitement and arousal that I had no sense of it whatsoever. There was no question in my mind that this was exactly what I wanted in the moment. I pulled off the freeway and blew the stop sign at the bottom of the ramp, recognizing how distracted I was already. I wanted to get there as quickly as I can. The arm that held the gun was trembling with anticipation, and I could feel sweat on the back of my neck. It felt like the temperature in the car had been dialed up 10 degrees all of a sudden. I don't think you have the guts, Lorelei said defiantly after we'd been silent for a moment. You don't have it in you. What are you doing? I asked, confused at the turn in the dialogue. I'm telling you that I don't think you're really in control here. If I want to continue, you'll let me. Am I wrong? Yes. Feeling some genuine anger come to the surface at what was now insults in the role play. This new approach of hers wasn't nearly as exciting. What the hell was she doing? Did she think I wanted to be challenged? Was she trying to make me angry? Then prove it. You don't want me to do this. Then stop me. She returned her hand to her jeans in defiance of my orders, unbuttoning them while glaring back at me as if she were actually daring me. Whatever it was about Lorelei that let me read her expression as if there was something written deep in the depth of her eyes came to life again. I could feel what it was she wanted me to do, and it excited me. More than that, it thrilled me more than anything ever had before. Without taking any time to consider how terrible of a thing it was, I turned it into action. Pulling my arm back, I swung out and hit her in the face with the butt of the gun. The vibration of the metal instrument in my hand as it collided with her cheekbone was jarring, and when I looked back at her, I could see the red mark that was already there, along with a small cut where a sharp edge had caught her. Horror filled me. The shame that I'd been unable to find moments earlier leaped to the forefront of my mind, and I pulled back, afraid of my own actions. I'd just hit Lorelei, the woman I loved. What was wrong with me? I guess you are man enough, she said in what sounded like a low moan as she checked her face for blood. Did you like that? I asked in shock, clearly breaking character. Her response had calmed my mind some, but the terror of what I'd allowed myself to do was still waiting at the door. Did I want to do it again? That was the most alarming thought. What if I liked it? Did that make me a terrible person? I knew that I'd be quick to judge someone else for feeling that way, but it didn't feel so terrible if it was what she wanted. Knowing full well that I was trying to justify it, I held to that thought. It wasn't wrong if she enjoyed it. I didn't think I'd like being taken hostage, but I'll have to admit, you're starting to excite me. Being scared turns me on, and I am terrified of you now. Her hands started to return to defy me once again, and I hit her a second time. She gasped, but with a low tone that left no doubt that it was dripping in satisfaction. The dueling emotions of being appalled with myself and more excited than I had ever been in my life continued to wage war inside of me. The excitement rose from deep in my gut and pushed back the shame from my mind. Each passing minute gave more advantage to the building desire in its new, dark appetite. There had been a spot I'd had in mind to stop, but we were alongside the park now, and there was no traffic. I couldn't wait another minute. I pulled over and slammed the shifter into park before jumping from the car and running around to her side to pull her out at gunpoint. Something inside of me almost forgot that it wasn't a loaded gun. Lorelei's response told me that the same might be true for her. She seemed to be genuinely afraid when it was pressed into her flesh, but her excitement had not diminished at all. Do you like treating me this way? Does it excite you to control me? I just nodded while my eyes bored holes through hers. I looked her up and down and needed to get what I was after without any further delay. I grabbed the front of her shirt with my free hand and pulled hard. Surprising myself with my own strength, the material tore right off her body. That brought another gasp from Lorelei's lips as she was left standing in the cool evening breeze in her bra. "You can't do that!" she shrieked, looking down at the torn material on the ground. Seeing her more genuine response, coupled with the excitement of the role play, added an even greater thrill for me. She wasn't playing. I had really shocked her, and I liked it. My actions once again preceded my thoughts, and I brought the back of my free hand across her face, hitting the same side I'd pistol whipped in the car. The third blow caused her to cry out, and I could hear pain in the wail, but there was still pleasure mixed with it. She looked back at me, and something flipped for both of us. Without saying a word, I knew that the role play was over. We were as hyped up as we were going to get. I tossed the gun back in the car and we undressed right there on the side of the road. Something about the buildup had left me without control. My mind lost itself and I felt like I was attacking her as we came together. Passion consumed me and I lost all sense of time. Everything, even the physical sensations, felt somehow otherworldly, and whatever had risen to life inside of me and clung to the dark desires I discovered seemed to grow stronger through the entire encounter. The danger of what we'd done that night, what we were planning to do, and what I forced her to do on the side of the road all brought fireworks between us that was unlike anything we'd experienced together in the past. Lorelei was everything. She had already taken love and lust to new heights, and now she was taking me to places I never even knew existed. I took my time gathering our clothes after lying in the car for a few minutes to recover once we were done. Lorelei made a snarky remark about her shirt, which wasn't in good enough condition to wear anymore, and ended up just riding home in her bra and jeans. I enjoyed the view the rest of the way home and went in to get her a coat before she made the walk from the car to her apartment building. When Lorelei jumped into the shower, I felt my phone vibrate in my pocket and checked the notifications. Apparently, I'd missed a call while we were otherwise occupied on the side of the road. It was from Celeste. What had she called for? She knew what I'd done already. There wasn't any hope for me past that. Part of me wanted to call her back, but I knew what I couldn't do that with Lorelei around. I needed to find another time. When Lorelei went to get some ammo, I could find out what she was calling about. In the meantime, I removed the notification and deleted her call from my log. I trusted Lorelei, but some things just weren't worth the risk, and this was one of them. When my love came back out of the bathroom, I felt sick looking at her. There was a giant bruise across her cheek and the side of her face, along with 2 small cuts. "I am so sorry," I said. Now that the feeling of violent, insatiable passion had faded, I was left with nothing but the realization that I'd hurt her. Tears threatened the corners of my eyes as guilt washed over me. "Don't be. That was intense, and I loved every second of it. The lingering pain is exciting for me, too. I hope you don't think that's too weird." Everything about that was weird, but it excited me nonetheless. I don't know why, but there was something about treating her that way, an action that I found repulsive, that had just felt right in that moment. The same feeling returned as I watched her smile back at me, the evidence of my own abuse right there on her face. Maybe I was sick and this had woken something inside of me that I needed to deal with. Whatever the case, I knew one thing for sure, that I wanted more of what I'd felt with her that night. My thoughts took me back to her question that started it all. Would I cross more lines for her? Would she actually ask me to? Only time would tell. First, I needed to take care of the matter at hand. I had to kill Michael. Lorelei cut through my distant thoughts when she stepped up and gave me a big kiss. "You didn't hurt me," she said, her hands holding my face as she looked up at me. "I asked for this, and I loved every minute. I'll tell you if you ever cross the line. I promise." Once again, the perfect woman knew the perfect thing to say to help me level back out. I didn't want any doubts in my mind about what we'd done. I loved her and I would never, ever want to hurt her or any other woman for that matter. My biggest fear at that point would be what others would think when they saw her. But then I recalled that there weren't many people who knew the both of us. We'd never hung out with my friends, and my family had made me choose her over them. Lorelai was all I had left, but she was all I ever needed. Alrighty, that's it. What do you guys think? Let's see what you guys are saying. Ooh, I see hearts. I see hearts. Alrighty. Okay. Let's go way up here. All right. Daniel, you want to tell us how much it is and where they can find it? I know it's free on KU. Hey, Lynn. Welcome to the dark side over here on YouTube. Pebbles. Lori, it's about darn time you got here, sister. Lori, you got all the information for it, links and all that? Jen's here. Hi, Jen. Wow, I got everybody over here. Yay! Well, hello, Miss Debbie. Oh. I don't know. Do whatever you got to do here. If you can, you can. Anyways, it's called. Oh Lord, I'm awful. Why do you guys give me this stuff today? First to Follow, book 1 of the 4th Sin series by Daniel Grayson. And Daniel, this was it is the Full House tonight, isn't it? Yay! Daniel, is this your first book? Because I know you're a new to me author, so. Alrighty. While Daniel and them are asking all this, doing all that stuff, as yes, debut. Yay. Congratulations, Daniel. Congratulations. Awesome job. So tomorrow night we will have Aaron Trejo here with Mason. It's a motorcycle book, y'all. You know how I like them motorcycle books. And then after that, Thursday night is Alexandria Reed with Cooper's Heart. So we'll be back on Facebook next 2 nights. Gets to where I get this kind of reaction. I may just start doing this over here all the time because I have more people in here than I had over there a lot of times. So, alrighty. Well, I hope everybody enjoyed it. I sure did. My eyes are, I think the pollen's getting me here. Everything under the sun is blooming out around here right now. And you'd think all this rain would wash it away, but I think it's just making it worse. So, all right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it. Go get his book. And we will see you tomorrow night. Happy reading, everybody. Happy St. Patty's Day. Go kiss an Irishman. I'm Irish. Kiss me.